Book 1, Part 3 of the Annals by Publius Cornelius Tacitus, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Annals by Publius Cornelius Tacitus, Volume 1, translated by Alfred John Church and William Jackson Brodrib. Book 1, A.D. 14 and 15, Part 3. Meanwhile, there was an outbreak among the Chauci, begun by some veterans of the mutinous legions on garrison duty. They were quelled for a time by the instant execution of 2 soldiers. Such was the order of Mennius, the camp prefect, more as a salutary warning than as a legal act. Then, when the commotion increased, he fled, and having been discovered, as his hiding place was now unsafe, he borrowed a resource from audacity. It was not, he told them, the camp prefect, it was Germanicus, their general, it was Tiberius, their emperor, whom they were insulting. At the same moment, overawing all resistance, he seized the standard, faced round towards the river bank, and exclaiming that whoever left the ranks he would hold as a deserter, he led them back into their winter quarters, disaffected indeed, but cowed. Meanwhile, envoys from the Senate had an interview with Germanicus, who had now returned, at the altar of the Ubii. 2 legions, the 1st and 20th, with veterans, discharged and serving under a standard, were there in winter quarters. In the bewilderment of terror and conscious guilt, they were penetrated by an apprehension that persons had come at the Senate's orders to cancel the concessions they had extorted by mutiny. And as it is the way with the mob to fix any charge, however groundless, on some particular person, they reproached Manatius Plancus, an ex-consul and the chief envoy, with being the author of the Senate's decree. At midnight they began to demand the imperial standard kept in Germanicus's quarters, and having rushed together to the entrance, burst the door, dragged Caesar from his bed, and forced him by menaces of death to give up the standard. Then, roaming through the camp streets, they met the envoys, who, on hearing of the tumult, were hastening to Germanicus. They loaded them with insults, and were on the point of murdering them, Plancus especially, whose high rank had deterred him from flight. In his peril he found safety only in the camp of the 1st legion. There, clasping the standards and the eagle, he sought to protect himself under their sanctity. And had not the eagle-bearer, Calpurnius, saved him from the worst violence, the blood of an envoy of the Roman people, an occurrence rare even among our foes, would, in a Roman camp, have stained the altars of the gods. At last, with the light of day, when the general and the soldiers and the whole affair were clearly recognized, Germanicus entered the camp, ordered Plancus to be conducted to him, and received him on the tribunal. He then upbraided them with their fatal infatuation, revived not so much by the anger of the soldiers as that of heaven, and explained the reasons of the envoys' arrivals. On the rights of ambassadors, on dreadful and undeserved peril of Plancus, and also on the disgrace into which the legion had brought itself, he dwelt with the eloquence of pity, and while the throng was confounded rather than appeased, he dismissed the envoys with an escort of auxiliary cavalry. Amid the alarm, all condemned Germanicus for not going to the upper army, where he might find obedience and help against the rebels. Enough, and more than enough blunders, they said, had been made by granting discharges and money, indeed by conciliatory measures. Even if Germanicus held his own life cheap, why should he keep a little son and a pregnant wife among madmen who outraged every human right? Let these at least be restored safely to their grandsire and to the state. When his wife spurned the notion, protesting that she was a descendant of the divine Augustus, and could face peril with no degenerate spirit, he at last embraced her and the son of their love with many tears, and after long delay compelled her to depart. Slowly moved among a pitiable procession of women, a general's fugitive wife with a little son in her bosom, her friends' wives weeping round her, as with her they were dragging themselves from the camp, not less sorrowful were those who remained. There was no appearance of the triumphant general about Germanicus, and he seemed to be in a conquered city rather than in his own camp, while groans and wailings attracted the ears and looks even of the soldiers. They came out of their tents asking, what was that mournful sound? What meant the sad sight? Here were ladies of rank, not a centurion to escort them, not a soldier, no sign of a prince's wife, none of the usual retinue. Could they be going to the Treveri to be subjects of the foreigner? Then they felt shame and pity, and remembered his father Agrippa, her grandfather Augustus, her father-in-law Drusus, her own glory as a mother of children, her noble purity. And there was her little child, too, born in the camp, brought up amid the tents of the legions, whom they used to call in soldiers' fashion Caligula, because he often wore the shoes so called to win the men's goodwill. But nothing moved them so much as jealousy towards the Treveri. They entreated, stopped the way, that Agrippina might return and remain, some running to meet her, while most went back to Germanicus. He, with a grief and anger that were yet fresh, began to address the throng around him. Neither wife nor son are dearer to me than my father and the state, but he will surely have the protection of his own majesty, the empire of Rome, that of our other armies. My wife and children, whom, were it a question of your glory, I would willingly expose to destruction, I now remove to a distance from your fury, so that whatever wickedness is thereby threatened may be expiated by my blood only, and that you may not be made more guilty by the slaughter of a grandson of Augustus, by the murder of a daughter-in-law of Tiberius. For what have you not dared? What have you not profaned during these days? What name shall I give to this gathering? Am I to call you soldiers, you who have beset with entrenchments and arms your general's son? Or citizens, when you have trampled under foot the authority of the Senate, even the rights of public enemies, the sacred character of ambassador, the laws of nations have been violated by you. The divine Julius once quelled an army's mutiny with a single word, by calling those who were renouncing their military obedience citizens. The divine Augustus cowed the legions who had fought at Actium with one look of his face. Though I am not yet what they were, still, descended as I am from them, it would be a strange and unworthy thing should I be spurned by the soldiery of Spain or Syria. 1st and 20th legions, you, who received your standards from Tiberius, you, men of the 20th, who have shared with me so many battles, and have been enriched with so many rewards, is not this a fine gratitude with which you are repaying your general? Are these the tidings which I shall have to carry to my father when he hears only joyful intelligence from our other provinces, that his own recruits, his own veterans, are not satisfied with discharge or pay, that here only centurions are murdered, tribunes are driven away, envoys imprisoned, camps and rivers stained with blood, while I am myself dragging on a precarious existence amid those who hate me? Why, on the first day of our meeting, why did you, my friends, wrest from me in your blindness the steel with which I was preparing to plunge into my breast? Better and more loving was the act of the man who offered me the sword. At any rate, I should have perished before I was yet conscious of the disgraces of my army, while you would have chosen a general, who, though he might allow my death to pass unpunished, would avenge the death of Varus and his 3 legions. Never indeed may heaven suffer the Belgae, although they proffer their aid, to have the glory and honor of having rescued the name of Rome and quelled the tribes of Germany. It is thy spirit, divine Augustus, now received into heaven, thine image, father Drusus, and the remembrance of thee, which, with these same soldiers who are now stimulated by shame and ambition, should wipe out this blot and turn the wrath of civil strife to the destruction of the foe. You too, in whose faces and in whose hearts I perceive a change, if only you restore to the Senate their envoys, to the emperor his due allegiance, to myself, my wife and son, do you stand aloof from pollution and separate the mutinous from among you. This will be a pledge of your repentance, a guarantee of your loyalty. Thereupon, as suppliants, confessing that his reproaches were true, they implored him to punish the guilty, pardon those who had erred, and lead them against the enemy. And he was to recall his wife, to let the nursling of the legions return, and not be handed over as a hostage to the Gauls. As to Agrippina's return, he made the excuse of her approaching